Today we'll be looking at the least common multiple and the greatest common factor of sets of numbers. Please copy down the standard benchmark indicator on a clean page in your math notebook. The student will find common multiples and factors, including least common multiple and greatest common factor. Least common multiple. There are different ways to find the least common multiple of two numbers. Here are two ways to find the least common multiple of 4 and 5. On the left-hand side, we have step 1, list the multiples of each number, 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, and so on, and then for 5, 5, 10, 15, 20, and so on. Step 2, check the multiples the numbers have in common. So you can see they circled 20 and 40. Then determine which common multiple is the least. So 20 and 40 are both common multiples, but 20 is the least. So the least common multiple of 4 and 5 is 20. The other way to find the least common multiple is to use prime factors. So for step 1, you list the prime factors of each number. So 4 is 2 times 2, and 5 is just 5, because it is prime. Step 2, circle the number of times each different factor appears. So there are 2 2's and a 5. So 2 times 2 times 5 is 20, because you multiply together the numbers you circle, and you get the least common multiple. You can do it either method, whichever way makes the most sense to you. In the video, I'm going to demonstrate using the method on the left, but you're welcome to use the method on the right as well. All right, so we're going to find the least common multiple of each set of numbers. So we're going to use the first method and write out a list of each of the multiples. So we're going to start with 6. We're going to go up. Usually it's a good idea to go 4 or 5 numbers. Sometimes you need to go further, but 4 or 5 is a good place to start. Next, we're going to list 5 multiples for 7 right below it. So far we can tell that we don't have a number that matches up, so we're going to take each one of them 3 more multiples to see if that helps. Next, we're going to circle the common multiples. So the first multiple they both have in common is 42. Therefore, since this is the first number that shows up on both lists, we know it is the least common multiple. For number 2, we're looking at the least common multiple of 4 and 5. They've actually already done that for us above in the example, so we're just going to fill that one in as 20. Then for 3, we have 10 and 15. So we're going to, again, go for about 5 multiples and write them out for each number. Next, we're going to circle any numbers that show up on both lists. So the first number that shows up on both lists is 30. And because that is the first number that is common between both lists, that is our least common multiple. For 4, we now have 3 numbers, but it's the same procedure. We're going to write out the first 5 multiples of each number and find the first number to show up on all 3 rows. Next, we look and circle any number that shows up on all 3 rows, and we can see 10. And since it's the first number to show up on all 3 rows, it's our least common multiple. For 5, we have 6 and 21. So the same thing, we're going to write out our multiples for the first couple for each number. And the first number to show up on both lists is 42. So we're going to circle that and write it down as our least common multiple. So for number 6, we have 8 and 10. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to write out the first 5 multiples and find the first one that is common. Then, looking at our list, we can see 40 is the first number that shows up on both lists. So we're going to circle it and then write it down as our least common multiple. All right, for number 7, we have 12 and 20. So we're going to write out the multiples and circle the first one that's common on both lists. Since 60 is the first number to show up on both lists, it is our least common multiple. For 8, we have 5, 10, and 25. So we're going to write out the multiples for each one and then circle the first number that shows up on all 3 lists. Now we're going to look through all 3 lists, and we see 50 is the number that shows up first on all 3, so we're going to circle that. And that makes 50 our least common multiple for 5, 10, and 25. For number 9, we have 7 and 8. So again, we're going to write out the list of multiples and find the first number that shows up on both lists. Since 56 is the first number to show up on both lists, we're going to circle that and write it down as our least common multiple. Next, for number 10, we have a number sense question. If you know the least common multiple of 4 and 5, how could you find the least common multiple of 40 and 50? Well, we know that the least common multiple of 4 and 5 is 20, so we're going to write that down first. We know that to get from 4 to 40 you multiply by 10, and from 5 to 50 you multiply by 10. So it makes sense that we can take the least common multiple and multiply that by 10. So the least common multiple of 40 and 50 is going to be 200. For 11, we have writing to explain. Peter says the least common multiple of 4, 6, and 12 is 24. Do you agree or disagree? Explain. Well, the first thing we have to do is check his math. So we need to write out the multiples of 4, 6, and 12 to find the first number that shows up on all three lists. Now, we're going to circle any numbers that show up on all three lists. So we can say Peter is wrong. We're going to disagree because the least common multiple is actually 12. 24 is a multiple, but it's not the least common multiple. Alright, please make sure all of this is copied down into your math notebook and glue in the least common multiple page. Then, please move on to the next video to watch the greatest common factor.